to the data-driven community virtual meeting. Let's start with a few words about the data-driven community. For more information, simply check the community website. I will put all the links in the chat once we will start the session of today. I will add the link to the community as well, and I added to this slide a short way to remember it. Just remember data-driven community in one word. That's the name of the website. Oops, my slide is stuck. Awesome. Okay, if you will scroll down at the main page of the community, you will notice that we have two branches of activity. On the left side, you can notice the Future Data-Driven Summit, which is an annual joint conference. We are leading with multiple data platform user groups, partners. This year, the conference is over. It was on September 24, and we already started to think about the next year event. On the right side of the page, you can notice the second branch of activity, which are the weekly meetings of the Cloud Data-Driven User Group, like today. And here you can follow our next weekly meeting. You are more than welcome to contact any of the community board. Jen Joseph, I think is here with us in the meeting as well, is the founder and the co-administrator of the community. Defti Bugori is a moderator and event organizer. And myself, my name is Ronen Arieli. I'm from Israel, working as a senior consultant in the field of data platform and architecture of enterprise-level systems. And I'm the second co-administrator of the data-driven community, and I will be hosting this meeting today. Together, we are here to help and serve the data platform community. During the meeting today, please feel free to use the chat for questions and discussions as well. This is not a conference, it's not just a lecture, it's a user group meeting. So feel free to discuss between yourself as well. You can answer questions that other people raise. You are also welcome to use the reaction, which is something that I like a lot. It does not interfere with the course of the meeting. If you hear something that you love, like, or you just want to clap hands virtually, feel free to do so. I'm honored to introduce our guest speaker for today, Andreas Wolter. I suppose that everyone here knows Andreas. He is very familiar. Andreas is a data security architect and ex-Microsoft senior program manager, data security. He is actually one of the 7 Microsoft certified master for data platform worldwide. So with this short introduction, Andreas, you can share your screen and take control from here. You can add a few words about yourself as well.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Ronan, and thank you for inviting me. It was a pretty ad hoc decision. I usually don't do virtual meetings, or not many. I don't think it fits for many topics, but for this one it fits. And Ronan was very convincing. So here I am, glad I made it, and we made it happen. All right, so the topic is contained availability groups today. Last chance to jump ship here or switch meetings if that's not what you were looking at. Yeah, just a few words about me. I mean, Ronan has said most about me. So I have a company now, Sapedon Quality Lab LLC, which I used to have before I moved to the US in Germany. So I'm German, then worked for Microsoft UK, then Microsoft US, a little bit in Dubai. Yeah, been around in the security team at Microsoft. Been speaking at conferences for, what is it now, 15 years or something, I suppose. Yeah, very often on security, but not only. I mean, as a certified master, I help customers with architecture and performance as well. So These are some of my subjects. All right. I like sessions that are interactive, and since this is not such a huge audience, I think it's probably doable that you actually can use the microphone without everybody hammering it. So I think that's the plus side. If you have a smaller group, you can actually talk. So quick raise hands. You have this button here up in Teams. First, a raise hands. Have you worked with availability groups beforehand? So I have an idea here. I think I will get a count once you click the raise hands. Okay, I see 1, 2, 3, 4. Guys, can you find the button up there? It's next to chat, then comes people, then comes raise. That's where the raise hands is. Now I have 5, 6. Just to get in a fair count. I can't imagine that the other half hasn't worked. Yeah, I think almost 3, 4 people haven't raised their hand. Okay, so maybe you haven't worked with availability groups. That's fair. Not a problem. Okay, so about 7. Yeah, all right, take the hands down and take them back up if you have worked with contained availability groups, please. I suppose it won't be as many, so let's just see. Okay, 4. And by that, I mean production or just played at home or in a lab, like actually in production? Like how many of you have it actually in production, contained AGs? 1, 2, 1. Just one left, one last man standing. Okay. Yeah, well, I have no further question on that one. Cannot limit it further. So, all right, yeah. So they are pretty. I mean, they are new in SQL 2022, and they're pretty unknown. Yeah? So I think the advertising around them isn't that big. So I'm not surprised that not many people have worked with them. But I'm glad that I reached you 24 people here, and maybe I can convince you guys, some of you, that it works for you. Or if it doesn't, then at least you have found a good reason in this session why you can't or should not use them. All right, so these are roughly the goals or the things I want to talk about, the good, the bad, the ugly. There isn't as much ugly stuff, right? But there's always some stuff that isn't perfect, right? So definitely this session is a bit, I'm not talking about what just works, right? I want to call out the challenges in this session to make it actually practical for you guys. So we're going to talk a bit about availability in a sense in general, security aspects, management aspects, and deployment specifically in the context of contained availability groups, and sum it up at the end with some best practices that hopefully help you once you start working with them. Okay. Yeah, so a quick refresher, and especially since some of you haven't worked with availability groups at all, also a bit of a reminder. So in general, so let's looking at this picture here, we have on the left-hand side a SQL Server instance. And let's just say there are 2 availability groups. Let's just call them availability groups right now in the first stage, right? That you have formed out of multiple databases. Ignore the names of the database for this moment, right? So if you're working with generic, or it's hard to say the right term for the non-contained, I don't know. Some say traditional. I'm tempted to say standard, but standard is actually the term used for the standard edition availability group, which only has one database inside. So it's a bit annoying. So the non-contained availability groups, right? You can form multiple of them on your server, depending on your needs, and then they will fail over individually if only parts of specific databases are affected, right? That's the effect if you have availability groups in general. And feel free, I hear some sounds here. If you want to say something, either take a break when I'm making a break, take the chance, or raise the hand, then I know that I will give you a chance to speak. You want to say something?
Just to clarify that the option to use the microphone is open to everyone. We do not allow the camera because of the internet speed, it make a issue. But the microphone is open, so if someone put his hand up, we can give you the permission just to speak.
Excellent, great preparation. Thanks, Ronen. Yeah, so and now when we talk about contained availability groups, the difference is, and now we need to actually look at the database names. So you see the first bunch of database names is master, model, MSDB, and TempDB. They exist in every SQL Server, obviously. And now comes user databases. So let's ignore those two here, starting with CAG for a moment. There comes a user database 1, user database 2, and then 3 and 4 on the bottom, right? If you work with contained availability groups, in the moment that you form a contained availability group, the SQL Server system will create an additional master database and an additional MSDB database, which will then be part of the contained availability group. And that's what we see here in this picture, right? And those additional master databases will be prefixed with the name of the availability group, right? So that's what I'm showing here, basically. Yeah, the availability group name, then underscore master, availability group name, underscore MSDB, and then comes the user databases. So that's what you will see on your environment. So if you have many contained availability groups, you will have many more master databases, except they won't start with availability group name. So it's a bit, can be confusing if you have a large amount of databases to differentiate what is what, because there is no different icon, right? It's just a database from the host perspective, right? But of course, in reality, it is a system database, even though it's not really used by the host itself. So then the second availability group, contained availability group, has its own master and MSDB, right? So that's how that looks on the host. And when you do a failover, or sorry, ignore failover, when you connect to the availability group, to the contained availability group, using the listener of that availability group, what you will see is exactly those databases again, except now you don't have the prefix of the master, right? Now it will just look like, oh, that's the master database. And that's my MSDB database. What you will not see is model database, but you will have the TempDB. But the TempDB is shared between all of them, right? So it's not technically part of the CAG. TempDB is still hosted and only one time available at the host, right? No multiple TempDBs. So resources in general, you can keep in mind, obviously, CPU, memory, everything. And TempDB is just another resource. In a sense, is used by all the availability groups, even the contained availability groups across, right? There is no difference, right? If you have 1 terabyte RAM and 12 CPUs, you have to figure out basically looking at the host if that is sufficient for all your availability group databases. It's not per availability group, it's for the host, right? So yeah, so if you're connected to the listener, you will see again a master and an MSDB, but that is actually a copy or the contained master database. All right. Yeah, and the other aspect here is already important. So in order to actually use the contained availability group, you do need to use a listener, right? I mean, you can create one without a listener, but you can't make any use of it. Right? If you compare that with a standard availability group, with a non-contained availability group, well, as long as you connect to the right host and then figure out the right database, it doesn't really matter if you connect to the listener or to the host, right? Unless you want to use this read-only routing automatic stuff, right? But technically, it doesn't really matter if you connect to the listener or to the host itself. However, for the contained availability group, you just can't use it without a listener because you will never be able to see this contained environment. And that's the whole point of the contained availability group, that it contains master and MSDB because master and MSDB contain logins and jobs, which are then contained as well. And that's the whole purpose of these contained availability groups, to make sure that these server level objects that are usually on the host are now actually contained. So everything in master, so let's ignore now the left-hand side, just focus on the container availability group, right? If you only have this in front of you, it's like a virtual SQL Server. I like this comparison, right? If you only ever connect to this listener of the CAG, it's like your virtual SQL Server, which is formed from the host, and you have everything there. You have your logins, you have your jobs, and they can be different from the host. In fact, they should be different because that's the whole advantage, right? Is there a question?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Michaela, it seems like it's not clear what is the functionality of the content availability group, and is for controlling the permissions.
Okay, yeah, it has multiple advantages, and we are basically getting there, right? So this is the background how it works. Let me see, do I have a specific slide for the advantages at all? No, I don't have one, but it will come clear in the upcoming slides. Yeah, but if you just think about the context, master and MSDB, it's about logins, which have permissions, but only on the server, right? The database permissions, they don't change, right? This you can do with standard availability groups, non-contained, right? It's about server level stuff, server level permissions, server level logins. There's a noisy background somewhere.
Let me unmute everyone and we'll continue. Give me 1 second. Someone wants to put your hand.
Well, the question is good, right? But it's not just about permissions, it's more, right? And hopefully we will get a total understanding at the end of the session. But on a rough surface, right, anything in master, logins and permissions, and MSDB, jobs, schedules, stuff that you have in MSDB, right? But not performance, right? That's the differentiator, or that's the key. That's where you have to draw the line, right? There's objects, and then there's performance resources, right? This is not contained. It's the objects, right? Yeah. All right. Let's get specific about availability group, availability. So quite honestly, there isn't much to say, right? The availability of contained availability groups isn't different from standard availability, from non-contained availability groups, right? It's the same setup, the same logic behind the same technology. There is no change in that sense, right? But if you think a bit further, your application availability is depending on that you actually can connect to the application and that the application can run with whatever it needs, right? So many applications have jobs that they require to do stuff in the background, right? Scheduled or even on demand, right? So they need to be available as well, right? And obviously you need to have the logins to even be able to connect to the database as an application. So, and this is where the contained availability groups brings an availability advantage, because you can be sure that all these logins and jobs, because they are contained, are also always available. It's not the case of, oh, I forgot to transfer the jobs since I created new jobs for this application. I forgot to deploy them to the third node. I only deployed them to the second node. And unfortunately, today we had to fail over to the third node, and the jobs aren't there, right? Or I created new logins, or actually I didn't. My junior DBA did, but he completely forgot about that he needs to synchronize the logins with the other hosts, right? And after the failover, well, you will realize you can't connect. So yeah, availability, in theory, technical database is there, but those logins can't connect, right? So this is the advantage in terms of availability of the contained availability groups, that you can't forget these things, right? The logins, the server permissions that have been changed, certificates that may be in use for CLR or other stuff inside the database. There may be certificates in master database. That is part of the availability group. Yeah, schedules as well. Yeah, change schedule, it's still available. It's part of the availability group, so it fails over to the other host. Everything is there, fully contained, proxies, whatever, right? All these things are part of that. So that's the advantage in terms of availability. Not so much in terms of, oh, it's quicker or anything. No, but it's more complete. You can't forget it, right? Hope that helps. All right. So that was hopefully simple. Security. Yeah. So there are a few gotchas here in terms of security. I sent everything is contained like logins. Okay, yeah, that's nice. Obviously, at creation time of a container availability, there may not be any logins yet, right? If you create it in this moment, well, the logins you need to create after you connect to the contained AG, but you can't connect before you haven't created it, right? So this is why all sysadmins that exist on the host will be copied inside the CAG at the moment of creation. All right, so that then you as a DBA can immediately connect to the CAG and roll out any further logins, non-sysadmin logins that are required for this specific contained availability group. All right. Yeah. Let's actually have a look here in between here. So that's a good point to make a cut and actually have a look at a contained availability group. So I am connected here to my host on the left-hand side. So this is a host. Name is not really relevant. You have database. I hope you can see the stuff. I have forgotten to enable my magnifier here. So here's a bunch of databases. Here we also see the CAG1_master and CAG1_MSDB. So this is a sign there is a contained availability group. Right, here's another database that is synchronized. So if I look under on availability group, I see an availability group. Actually, the icon is a little bit different if you compare it with a non-contained one. I don't have both of them here, but you would see a tiny difference. It's like a line around, like it's contained. And then you see the database that are inside. You see, yeah, okay, that's in fact those two databases that otherwise, if you wouldn't know about contained AGs, you would be like, who on earth creates a master database with such a strange prefix? What kind of trash is that? Do you need that? Yeah, let's get rid of that, right? No, this one is actually in use for this contained AG. So anybody connecting to a contained AG can store data in there, right? And we have a listener here that's absolutely important, otherwise I cannot connect to it. So that's the host. I see a few databases here. All right, obviously I have my system databases. So, and now if I connect to the contained AG, and this is the connection here, all right, this is SQL test AG1. And what do I see? I just see the one user database, that's DB1, right? That's the one that was synchronized on the host, the system databases. Okay, I see one master, one MSDB, I don't see model, and I see the temp DB. Right. So these are the ones that are contained here. They are actually just having a normal name, right? So their name is here appearing as if I would have a normal server. So, but I can tell there is no model database. So that's one indicator that I'm not really on a host, right? This is actually a contained system, or it's a buggy system. But last time I have seen a SQL Server who works without model, that was like SQL Server 7.0. There was actually a condition where that worked for a moment. So nope, this is a contained AG, right? If I could go on security, I see a few logins here. I created one login here. Let me create one here just for today. For our fun, let's call it data-driven. And as I'm lazy, I will give it the same password, ignoring all this stuff here. This is just to show. So this data-driven login exists inside my contained AG now. Right? If I go on the host, on security, logins, obviously it will not be here, right? Nothing to do here, right? It's really just inside the contained AG. So the data-driven user, if that guy wants to connect to the AG, has to be using the listener. That's the name, and that will work. And then you will see, well, just whatever is contained, right? So that's how you contain stuff. All right, and the same would appear with other objects on this level, right? One difference is though that we can see here there are server roles. Sorry, here under server roles. Actually, I'm the one who was responsible for creating these server roles at Microsoft. These here, anything MS underscore, we created a bunch of them for SQL Server 2000. For some sad reason, they didn't all make it inside contained AGs. Yeah. I have talked with the team, but we have not resolved it yet. It's not really a strong reason why they aren't there. They just aren't, right? So hopefully they will adjust it and bring more of these contained roles, of these server roles here. But this is one tiny difference. If you rely on them, well, unfortunately, not all of them are here. All right. Okay. Auditing, that's one aspect that you need to be aware of. Hopefully all of you audit SQL Server. So if I ask for a raise hands, I have auditing running on my SQL Server, where I get 30 hands up. Quick. I'm watching. And let's see how we are here. And I will not remember your names. Don't worry. I will not take notes. I'm really just curious how many of you folks use auditing. As you know, I am in security and I have customers with security. So always interested in that. So that's not a big turnout, 10% or 15.
Your hand, it's not good. So raise your hand.
Yeah, you can raise your hand if you have auditing activated on your SQL Server. I'm not even asking if you look at the auditing or if it's set up in a certain way, but if you have it set up, that's all. Yeah. Okay. Well, 6, 7. All right. So a third of you. Okay. All right. So this is important here. If you use contained AGs, since everything is contained, that is server level, that means that includes auditing. So if you have contained AGs and you are so good that you actually have auditing at the server, that's nice. But now you also need to roll it out at the contained AG. Right? Do not forget that. Otherwise, you have total blind spots there. Right? That is unfortunately a common mishap, that people do not realize that auditing is really as also per CAG. Right? It's even if you have on the, let's say you create here an audit on the host and I don't know, put everything available, every activity that you can think of, put all of that here. Yeah, but if somebody is connecting to a CAG, is the CAG listener, so in my case to DB1, like here, none of that matters. Login failures, login success. Obviously, you can't create database inside the AG. I get that, but there are other things you can do. Whatever you audit, it will not be audited if you audit the host. You have to audit the CAG. So here, the audit on CAG level is separate from the host level. That is super important. And it, of course, is important that you also remember that when you collect your audits. I mean, hopefully you don't check your audits manually, right? You have a process to collect all these audits from all your hosts and CAGs to consolidate them somewhere. You need to connect to every CAG. So you need to be aware how many CAGs you have and what is their listener name, because only by doing that you will ever get and understand what you have in terms of audits, right? Now, you do not connect to the CAG to get the audit, right? You will probably use a file, right, on the system. So you should have a good file system structure where you have a file or a folder per CAG, or you just put it all in the same structure as the host. Right? Either way, as long as you have no naming conflict, everything is good, right? Just don't forget to create the audit, right? All right, was there a hand up? Note if you have more than one screen. Yeah, I'm not going to figure that out now. I'm sure that works, but until I figure that out, it's too much time. Thank you. I have it on the second screen here, some pieces. So, yeah. So why did I put this red note here on the bottom, right? Obviously, I do look at security tools of vendors, not just Microsoft tools, but also other vendors. And I have not seen any tool understanding CAGs. Seriously, not a security tool. And that's important. I mean, as we just understood audits, okay, but they may be in the file system. So as long as we thought about creating them, that's not on the tool. Okay, the tool collects from the file system. That's nice. But any tool that is checking like which logins exist, logins with bad passwords, orphaned logins, of logins with sysadmin or other high privileges on the server, right? SQL login versus Windows versus Entra ID logins. All these things are on the CAG level as well, right? So you have a host and you have the CAG. And these tools that I know, they don't bother looking in the CAG. They check the host. Oh, there's logins, give some complaints or not, and that's it. If they don't actually make a second connection open to a CAG, which they would need to understand how to do that, they are totally missing the picture there, right? So if you do that, if you do your security assessments, you need to remember that, right? You cannot only check your host, you also need to run to each CAG. So you need to have a smart way to understand, hey, what happens if I create more CAGs every week, right? How do I keep track of these new listeners? Because that's the way to get there. Now, this is really the only way to get there. You need to have a way to connect to the listener. There is no file anymore that you can rely on. You need to know the listener name of every new CAG. So you need to have a system for that in place. All right. Yep. So that's security. That catches some tools and people by surprise, right? It's the upside, but the downside is, well, you may have forgotten that you actually need to check on them. Okay. Yep. Management, jobs primarily, right? If you create jobs that are contained, okay, let's go. Hold 1 second. So here's a question still about security. Is there a standard automation to pull in new CAGs to the audit system? There is nothing from Microsoft or anyone out there. You need to come up with your own methodology. So what I do is I have deployment scripts for CAGs, since I create them very often. And every deployment of a new CAG then also deploys inside the CAG the auditing. So I need to wait until the CAG is created and then open a new connection to the CAG to create stuff. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
There is an option simply to create a trigger that check what you have, and then it's doing it. It's not part of SQL Server, but you can do it with even the logic apps in the Azure or something like this.
If you use Azure, in Azure, you might be able to trigger on creation of new CAGs. Also on SQL Server, you could probably use a trigger. I haven't used a trigger. No, I have it as part of my CAG deployment. Yeah, there's different thoughts about that. Trigger, I have not considered that, honestly. Yeah, but makes sense, right? Can do that as well. All right, jobs. So what's specific about jobs? We know this hassle that when you create jobs in a non-contained availability group, you need to create them on the second one. And you need also to watch out, that's the second piece, you need to watch out that the jobs don't run until they actually are primary, right? So you need this logic, am I on the primary, then run, if not, then run not. Or some jobs actually want to run on the secondary, right? In case of the contained AGs, that is not possible. The jobs, since we just saw me connecting to the contained AG, we have an understanding, it's like a virtual server. You're always on the right connection. The jobs are always primary. They always feel like they're primary. There is no secondary context for the jobs, right? So they will always run. When they are moved to the second, they will run. But the contained AG decides that. There is no script logic that you need, hey, am I on the secondary or not? Nope. The contained AG itself, when it's up, it's the primary, and that's where the jobs will run. So you never need to worry about that at all. That's the upside. Right? You just deploy the jobs in there, and that's it. And they will run on the primary only, and that's it. Yeah. What is important, though, for you is to decide which jobs do you actually throw inside the AG, right? Let's just have a quick look again, right? AG versus host. So let's just connect again. So here's the host up there. And here are my CAG connections. So the host has the agent has jobs. Here are tons of backup jobs, etc. If I go on my CAG, agent, jobs, well, there's nothing right now, right? If I create something here in that context, that only lives inside the context of the CAG, right? That job here, right? So it's up to you to decide which jobs go where, right? For application-dependent jobs, is clear answer, right? They go inside the CAG, right? That's the point, right? You may have the structure of one application has one CAG, So obviously all the jobs belonging to that go in the CAG. No question about that, right? However, when it comes to maintenance job, you need to think about it, right? You may want them to be part of the CAG to be sure that they always fail over with the contained AG if they really meant to do maintenance on a contained database level, on a contained AG level. So let's say different application needs different maintenance schedules. Then you want them to be part of the CAG, because otherwise, how are you going to control that from the host, right? That's a mess, right? So for the scenario that they are depending on the application, you throw them as well inside the CAG, right? Another reason might be that your third level support needs to have access to the maintenance jobs like DBCC, index optimize, whatever, right? Then they also may need to go in here and cannot just be on the host, right? If your third level support is only connecting to the CAG, you don't give them permission to the host, then you need to see whatever they need to work with in the CAG, right? Yeah. I have often this scenario that I just use, like if it's not too big, I just throw everything on the host or the maintenance. And then, of course, I need to synchronize this across all the 3 nodes because these jobs are not contained. All right, so I have to roll them out on all the 3 nodes, the maintenance jobs. But this allows me to do very simple maintenance across all databases, no matter how many CAGs I have. Right? That is in many scenarios useful, but may not always be the best idea. Right? So just you need to think about that. Limitations, CDC or contained AG? You mean CDC specifically? Yeah, like change data capture. Is that what you're asking about? Yeah. I'm not aware about change data capture limitations. It's not mentioned, at least, as a limit. I know replication doesn't work. CDC should work. Yeah, that's my knowledge, but double check books online. I have a link at the end. From my memory, CDC is not special in terms of CAGs, but I may be wrong. Yeah. All right. Backups. All right. Again, management. Let's have a look at the backups. So I will go on the host. This connection here is on the host. Select star from backup set, right? So we see lots of backups have happened on the host, and that's what I need when I do a restore, right? I create a restore script by using these backup tables, right? If I go, however, on my contained availability group connection, this one is the contained AG, well, sorry, that's the wrong script here, not the backup, not sessions. I'm talking about backup set. I see there's no backups have happened inside the CAG, right? Now that's because I haven't, right? But if I were to create a backup here, and I can do that, right? CAG, I can create a backup here in that context, right? I have can have backup jobs, right? If I do the backup here, I will see the backup here, right? So backed up, right? Done. So let's see, backup set is inside the CAG, but that entry, let's remember, is 420 rows, hasn't changed. That backup done inside the CAG isn't on the host. Now it's logical, but it creates an issue because the restore you cannot do inside the CAG. And for the restore, you need to know this entry here, right? To create the right script, right? So the trick is you basically create the restore script here on the host. You can click as far as you get here, right? Restore database, and you get the script from that. You can't run it here, right? You take that script from here and then run it on the host, right? The entry is correct, right? It tells me where the file is and what file to restore, but it doesn't exist on the host. So on the host, you cannot create this restore script because, well, there hasn't been any restore. The host doesn't know about it, right? See, nothing here, even though I have, right? So that's one gotcha, right? That you need to be aware of. That's on the slide here, right? The history is inside the CAG if you create it inside the CAG. So you may want to synchronize that manually. You can access the MSDB that's contained even from the host and copy stuff over. That's possible. That would be one way to synchronize all these backup information, right, back and forth. Yeah. Okay, so here was a question from the doc: change data capture, agent jobs, agent running, replicas and contained. Yeah, connect AG. Yeah, exactly. That should just be working. Okay. So, by the way, that's one thing that I do here. You have seen the script here. To always know where I'm working, I have created in all my environments, I have a special function here, Sarpedon TVF environment information, that is created in master as a function and tells me where I am. So this is a test environment. That's my actual server. And yes, I am in a contained IG, right? That's what this script tells me. If I run this script on the host, right, the same script, well, tells me, well, I'm not in a contained IG, right? There is no name of the IG. That's the server name. So I use this in my scripts for my automated deployments, right, to understand, am I in the right context, right? Because context matters, right? Really important in the CAG, right? Always be aware where you're doing stuff. All right, next topic, deployment. All right, so I've mentioned a little bit back and forth here on deployment. So when you create a new database, right, and that is a bit the culprit, that's the deployment that I mean here, right? In theory, everything should happen inside the CAG, but you can't create a database in a CAG. You can't create a database inside an availability group in general. You have to first create it on a host and then do the backup and then join it to the AG, right? The contained the database. So this means for the application vendors that they need to be aware of, ideally, to have a way to just create a database, stop installment, wait for me to put the stuff in the CAG, and then continue with whatever else they are doing. Right? The problem happens if you have application vendors that create database applications. One click. You click, it creates a database, it creates jobs, it creates logins, everything in one go. No way to interrupt that. Right? Now you are here, poor DBA, and everything is on a host, but you want it to be in the CAG. Well, have fun collecting all that stuff and throwing it in the CAG. That's what you have to do, right? There is no way around, right? If that is what it is, you have to basically have triggers and auditing in place to understand what did the deployment create on the host. You need to then copy it, script it out, whatever technique, right? And create it again inside the AG. So you take the logins from the server, script it, create it inside the AG using the listener. Whatever else you did, take the job, script it out, put it inside the AG context, create it there. Now after that, you drop everything from the host, hoping you haven't forgotten that one table that he created in master database to do whatever, right? These things happen, unfortunately, right? So that is why sometimes it can be a bit messy, right? If you want to have it really properly contained, you need to work with the vendor, right? Make him understand that ideally he should give you the creation script for the database. You create it, you put it in a CAG, and then you only give him the contained AG listener name or an alias, in fact, DNS alias, to connect to listener, and then he can continue his deployment. He can create logins and jobs inside the contained AG. So in an ideal world, the vendor never connects to the host, right? That's where you want to get to. That's the challenge here. All right, any questions on that? There's a hand up, Ronan. Oh.
No, everything okay.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm in the business of saving money also besides security, right? And one of the ways I do that for larger enterprises is basically we consolidate servers, right, to save license cost, Broadcom, VMware license, and SQL Server licenses. So I create lots of these AGs environments, and I work with probably hundreds of vendors by now, or at least 200 probably. So I have seen everything from very simple, from very compatible to totally undoable, right? In terms of CAG environment. So that's why it's special topic for me here, right? Some applications are easy peasy, you never think about, oh, that could be an issue, but many applications are really tricky, and then you need to be aware of these things. Right?
I actually wanted to ask you to mention the license. So it's perfect. Now
license. Okay.
yes, ask questions about when we promote a meeting. So just remember to mention it now or in a few minutes.
About licensing for CAG or?
Licenses when you are using different options like using only read write or only.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have a slide, but yeah, we can try to get to that at the end. Yeah, okay. So that was deployment. Now to a little bit limits and differences, and that also tackles that deployment. So for example, some vendors expect you to have or some database applications need certain server settings to be changed, like CLR enabled is one, could be one, and then there is full text search. There are some settings on the server level. So you may think, well, all the hosts great. I give them the CAG. And inside the CAG, as we know, the server settings, or many of them, are stored in the master database. Yeah, many of them, but not all of them. Many of them are actually stored in registry, right? And yeah, some of them in master, but even so, server settings in general are not contained. Yeah, the server settings can only be changed on the host. So for example, CLR enabled, if I have one application that needs that and the other contained AG applications don't need it, well, too bad. You need to enable the whole server, right? It's no different from standard, from non-contained AGs, right? But this is where you don't have an advantage. There's no difference, right? So server settings are not contained, right? It can only be changed on the host, actually. So if your application vendor goes there and tries to enable server stuff, right, he could even be sysadmin inside the CAG. That's possible, right? You make him sysadmin inside the CAG, and he tries to do stuff. Server setting, he cannot change, right? It's not possible, right? Unless he connects to the host, right? And if he knows how to connect to the host, yeah, okay. But inside the CAG, you can't do it because server settings are not contained. End of story, right? So that's the limitation. Another limitation, as you saw, and in theory, this should have gotten a big hooray from some people, even though it's so tiny. But did you see when I connect to the contained AG, I only see databases that are inside the CAG, right? This has been one of the biggest asks for the community for like 20 years by now. I'm not kidding, right? To have a feature that enables you to only see databases that matter to you. Not a feature that enables you to see databases that you own, because you can only have one owner. That doesn't help you, right? Or to see nothing, right? That's the other thing that we have. You can deny view database, but you have a feature that just enables you to see only the databases that matter to your application, and that's what that is. The contained databases, or the contained AG containing all the databases from that application that are contained here, only shows those databases. It doesn't matter what permission you have on those databases, right? You may not even have permission on the DB1 with that connection here. You would still see that DB1, but no other databases, right? So that's pretty cool, right? That they are also contained. So the application vendors, some of them I haven't even told that they're actually on a contained AG when I told them the connection, right? I mean, in a broader context, I have checked, of course, if they support it, but not every individual was aware. They just thought, oh, okay, cool, empty here. It's just mine, super cool. Yeah, not true, but why tell them, right? So that's the interesting aspect, right? You only see whatever is inside that CAG. Yeah. So what we noticed a little bit, these little bit gotchas, third-party tool vendors also don't know, or many of them don't know. Especially when it comes to observability in terms of security and this job scheduling, right? That's like performance monitoring tools do not have an issue because performance is measured on the host in general. And if I go on something like systemx sessions, I see every session on the host everywhere. Sorry, that was, I can probably also use this one, exec sessions, or let's just do right click here and then activity monitor, right? I can see here processes. If I go down, it's a bit crappy here as always, CIG master, somebody is there. let me see if I have a contained user here somewhere. Nope, not there right now. Let me open a connection to a, so this is sys, the user is sys, 8.4 delay. Actually, let's make it like this. Probably messing up the syntax. What was the syntax in? Okay, something like that. Okay, so that's hanging around here. So we see this one, and I'm looking from the host activity monitor. Yeah, we see him, right? Even though the data-driven user or login actually doesn't live on the host. If you check on the host, security logins, there is no data-driven. That is confusing, right? That may be confusing if you do your own scripts here. But it is recognizable. You can join with it, and then you will see, well, okay, there is a data-driven login, but it's a contained one, and that one uses certain resources, right? So performance monitoring is not affected, right? If you get missing indexes, index fragmentation from the whole host, it's all there, right? You see the whole host. All this information is across the whole host. Right? The issue comes with the security-related stuff, right? Yeah. All right, so those are the challenges, right? Complete list of accounts with access to SQL Server. It's a very common question, right? Who has access to SQL Server? Okay, select star from sys.logins. Yeah, not so quick, right? And open connection to every CAG listener and do the same, right? Repeat that per CAG. The second one is a bit also a bit painful, right? To have a quick understanding which jobs conflict with other jobs from other CAGs, right? Or basically, if you have a big host with hundreds of jobs, but many of them being contained, you need to remember to check the CAG jobs to understand when there are resource conflicts, right? Because if you do DBCCs on certain CAG databases, but they are contained, the DBCC jobs, that takes a lot of resources. On the host, you do not see that job, right? So you need to remember that. Yeah, database deployment, we talked about that. There is no simple way to just understand, oh, these are the connections that you need, right? The question came up, right? How can I automate that somehow, right? To understand where do I need to connect to, right? If I look here, availability groups, I can find the listener, of course, but I need to check that per on the host. I need to understand which AGs are there, CAGs. And then this is the listener, this is the network name, right? So you need to do that, right? There is no great way. What I can give you as a tip, what I do is I use registered servers, right? And I create at least 2 groups. Well, this is just a bare minimum, right? Just as in a low level, I create one group that contains a connection to every host, right? That I need. Certainly, I have it further subdivided per area and stuff, right? But on a nutshell, it's a host level connection is separate, and then the contained AGs. So I can quickly understand if I need to run stuff across contained AGs, right? Query against all contained AGs versus all hosts. Well, it's all here, but this is manual, right? So once you create a CAG, you need then to remember, okay, I need to put the listener of the newly created CAG into my logical, in my contained AG server group connection, right? The hosts don't change, but the contained AGs change more often, right? So that's one tip.
We have a question from Aaron regarding the security management.
Yeah. So question, can I use it for security management to grant sysadmin access to login, but only in database relevant to add information? So I'm reading loud and quick here. Yes and no. The issue is, so the security containment is not per guarantee. Anybody who knows the name of the host, right, and you can find it out, right, and has permissions on the host can still connect it. So if you have very broad connections on this on a CAG, you may find a way to connect to the host. I'm saying you may find. There is a bit confusion about that, and I have tested that, and but only briefly. So I saw it somewhere documented that any sysadmin that you create in a CAG can also connect to the host. I haven't found this to be true, right? I have a sysadmin. This is called sys, I believe. Sorry, server sysadmin, and logins. He is not here, and he cannot connect to the host in my tests, right? It's not that simple, but I wouldn't exclude it, right? We haven't made any security guarantees around it. That means they haven't tested every possible loophole, right? So I just took the standard way. It's not there, so I can't connect it. It's not that simple, but there may be ways, and Microsoft doesn't give you guarantees that you can block them from that. So see it more as a convenience thing than really a hardcore security functionality. Yeah, sorry, I have to give you such a lukewarm answer, but yeah, no guarantee means you can't really rely on it. That's official Microsoft talk here. The other question, container availability groups. No, the question is, can standard edition run contained AGs? Probably not, yeah. Yeah, no. Standard edition, SQL Server standard edition, no. There's only the standard availability group, which has only one database, and no, it cannot be contained. Yeah. But it's not working. All right. So that's that one here. Yeah, so what I do in my script basically to understand, am I on a host or am I not on a host? I mean, there's multiple ways. One of them is to detect, is there a model database? If there's no model, you're in a contained, but who knows, maybe that changes in future, right? So that another way is that you can check and you have to use your own SPID. So my SPID is 55 right now. This session here, and there is a column at the end here of the sessions that tells you if you're in a contained availability group. That should be it, this one here. Oh, it's not this one. Confusing stuff. No, it's not. Sorry, that was the row. This is the session here. This is the session. So this one is inside. So this is the line of my current session is in a contained availability group. That's how you can tell that your session is in a contained AG. And that I basically wrapped inside my own function here to give me those answers. Yep. All right, I've repeated that. Always check where you are. I don't accidentally run scripts against the host or vice versa. Right? You need to understand where you are. I usually split CAGs on application level if they are critical. However, there's many applications that are not so critical that I can just keep together, right? So it's a little bit the same thing as you would do with availability groups, right? With non-contained. The splitting or non-splitting isn't a big difference how you go about it, right? You just have to have in mind, okay, it actually gives you more advantages if you split it, because then the application can really only see its own server level objects, right? That's what it is. But otherwise, if you have a methodology to decide how many database to put in one availability group, it's probably going to be the same logic still, based on availability concerns mostly. I also recommend when you use availability groups in general, use DNS aliases. Right? Don't connect to the availability group listener. Right? Just using DNS alias, you can keep moving your stuff around and helps with the next migration. That's a general tip. Make sure your tools understand these availability groups or are not limited by them. Again, monitoring tools in general understand them or don't have to care about them, let's put it that way. But as soon as they look at jobs or schedules, or want to give you an overview over logins and stuff, well, they are probably failing, right? All right, so how do CAGs change the server recovery strategy? Are there any special steps to restore the databases? I mean, for standard user database, it's the same thing, except that you need to understand that if you do the backup from the context of the CAG, so if your backup jobs are part of the CAG, then you only have those backup entries in the MSDB database in the CAG. So that's where you know when your backup was done. All right, that's the one gotcha, but otherwise the restore is the same of the user database. Master and MSDB, yeah, good question. So we see those. If you look at the host, right, these are the contained master and MSDB. you just take a backup of them, right? That's the one thing that's easy. If they are broken and you need to recover the CAG, right? If they are broken, the CAG is basically broken, right? You will have to drop the CAG, right? Remove that whole thing here, right? And you have to rebuild the CAG, and you then rebuild it after you have restored these databases. They are basically just user database from the host level perspective, right? So after you restore the fresh or the oldest backup of those databases, availability group isn't there. Now you create the contained AG, and there is actually a button here. Oops, that's not the one. Let me just take the wizard. That makes it simple. So if you create a contained AG, yes, contained, you then say reuse system databases. And if you use the same name, CAG1, it will look for system databases with starting with CAG underscore, CAG1 underscore, right? So, and if you use reuse system databases, it will then reuse those existing master and MSDB. That's how you would restore those. Okay. Yep. Yeah, there's a few of issues that I found. I've communicated with Microsoft. Some of them are in the making. A little bit annoying. Jobs cannot log to a table. That actually is just a bug, right? Just doesn't work. Can't log to a table. There's a bug in the code. They're still writing to the host MSDB, and then they break. Audit name, there is an issue there. One gotcha is if you check your databases, if you check them here, actually can show that. Let's show that from the host. Select star from sys.databases. It's a pretty annoying one. So these are the contained, these are the contained ones here. The contained system databases. And let's see. Oh, okay, so it's fixed now. Oh, that's great. So there was a long period of time where they were where they didn't have the page verified checksum set on. Interesting. So they did fix. Yeah, check your server that maybe. So they were always on none. So now they are on checksum. That's great. Okay. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Anyway, that's that one. Yeah, trustworthy bit. I think that bug is still out there for the MSDB. Yeah, nothing that should block you, but just things you need to be aware of. All right. That's what I want to get across. What do we have in further question here? I hope that was interesting to you. We covered a little bit on licensing. So licensing in terms of CAG, yeah, they are not for they are only enterprise edition. Yeah, that's the one thing to say there. Yeah, any other questions? Oh, well, it's actually a bad idea to use CAGs. Only if the people who have to support it do not know it, right? If you have to hand it over to a, let's say, small company, it's not really a DBA, and you don't even know who's going to take care of that, that's definitely going to make things really bad for whoever takes over without any clue, right? Because whoever has to support the CAG will not understand that he actually needs to connect to the listener to see all these other logins that can connect to his server, right? And whatever else there may be. So you cannot have it as in a non-trained team, right? That is certainly important, right? Because it's not like automatically, right? You could say the same thing with SQL Server. You shouldn't even hand the SQL Server over to somebody untrained. Yeah, but this is a bit worse because SQL Server, at least you would figure out which SQL servers exist in your environment, right? That is easy to find. But the CAGs you don't find. There's not like you scan, oh, give me all CAGs. No, you have to actually go to the SQL Server and understand, there's availability groups. Oh, this is a contained one, not a non-contained one. And okay, I need to find the listener name and then remember that name and then walk to that listener name to connect to that one, right? So that is a bit trickier. So always have somebody who understands that. Yeah.
Okay, let's say one more license.
Yeah.
I'm talking about how to save money. Can you elaborate about this?
How to save money using CAGs? I mean, the CAGs itself doesn't save money, right? But CAGs is a tool in the tool belt. Basically, when you go about consolidating your services, there are availability groups, and now you have contained availability groups who make that even easier to keep all these objects in sync, right? So the saving money aspect is not about contained AGs itself. It's more about, well, if you do that, if you consolidate your servers and use availability groups, very smart. Remember, now you actually have contained availability groups who take away all this pain with having to synchronize jobs and logins, because that's a done deal, right? You just need to set them up properly, and then these things are self-contained, right? So that's how it makes it easier to work with availability groups. That's the aspect, right? But just the difference between contained AG and availability group itself is probably not going to save money. It's going to save some time if you understood it, right? So once you understand it, you save time because you don't need to keep syncing all these objects, right? And I mean, we all know how to do that, but honestly, tell me, have you never forgotten to synchronize something? Like when at night you need to really quickly roll out a new login or something, make a change on a job, something like that. I bet every one of us has once at least forgotten to make that change across all the nodes, right? Be it a job change or a login change or a permission on the server level change, right? And that is just done, right? So that's what saves time. I don't need to remember all these things. I don't need to have these synchronizing jobs in place and run them. Right. All right. Yeah, feel free to connect with me in LinkedIn. Hope that was useful. Thanks, everyone, and especially Ronan and team here. Okay.
Okay, first of all, thanks for a great session. I do want to remind everyone that we meet almost each week at the same day, at the same hour, and we will upload the recording. It might take a few days. This depends on the time that we have, but I will announce when it's ready. Usually I put a announcement on LinkedIn and Facebook, and you can follow the community website as well. So thanks a lot. If there are more questions, you are welcome to raise them. If not, we will meet you next week.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Andreas. Bye-bye all. Have a great day.